Sorry.
Carry.
That's already changed. All right, so we'll start again. I'd like to welcome everyone here. This is the February meeting of the regular February meeting of council. One thing I will say, just sort of at the beginning of the meeting, it's a fairly long agenda tonight, and I just want folks to know that all of these items on this agenda have been dealt with in depth at quite a number of committee meetings during the past month, and some of them even go back further than the past month or the past 2 months. So there, in some of these items there may not be a lot of discussion because council members are intimately familiar with the issues that are being sort of formalized here this evening. So with those few words of introduction, I'm about to call for a motion to approve the agenda, but prior to calling for that motion, I'm looking for an amendment to the agenda, and the amendment to the agenda would come under 8. I would call it 8N, and the title would be Release Summary Report from In-Camera Meeting February the 20th. That would become 8N, and then the Environmental Review Tribunal would slip to 8O, and it would follow that discussion under 8N. So that's the amendment that I'm going to be looking for, and I think somebody has that amendment.
Oh, sorry, I have it.
Okay.
As amended.
Yes.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett, Councillor Morel, that Mr. Council approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. So you've heard the motion. Those in favor of the motion, please signify. Motion is carried. So now, proceeding on, the next item on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures? Councillor Barrett.
Mr. Mayor, I have a disclosure from item 8J. That's the appointment of Robinson Consultants Inc. Engineering report regarding the JRDR municipal drain. So the respondents in that matter that's before a drainage tribunal are my wife's parents, my in-laws. So I won't be participating in voting on the appointing of that consultant.
Thank you very much. The disclosure is noted, and as of January the 1st, disclosures are now required to be reduced to writing, and Councillor Barrett has provided the written notice of his disclosure. So now moving on to item 4 on the agenda, which is delegations and presentations. We have none here this evening, so I can move then to item 5 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous council meeting, which is the meeting of January the 23rd. Councillor Smale, I believe you have that motion.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett. The municipal council receives and approves the minutes of the regular council meeting dated January 23rd, 2018.
Council, you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, about to call a question. Those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. Now, is there any business arising from that previous council meeting? Hearing none, about to move on then. And so I'm proceeding to item 7 on the agenda. Item 7 is the approval of various committee minutes. And 7A is the Public Library Board of November the 28th. Councillor Morel.
Yes, it's moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that Municipal Council receives the minutes of the Public Library Board meeting dated November 28th, 2017.
Council, you've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8B. Now, I'll just draw your attention to the fact that there seems to be a reversal of the special meeting of December the 20th, which was held at 1:30, and the committee meeting of December the 20th, which was held at 11. So 7B is the special meeting of December 20th, and I think Councillor Barrett, you have that motion. this calls for the meeting at, the special meeting, in my notes, is the one that took place at 11 o'clock with MP Brown in attendance.
Yeah, so the special meeting, so I have the minutes for the special meeting, not for the regular meeting.
Okay, so read the minute, read the
Yeah.
motion. for the
So moved by
special.
myself and seconded by Councilor Morel that municipal council receive the minutes of Port Management Committee special meeting dated December 20th, 2017.
Heard the motion, those in favor? Motion is carried. And then there's another one on December the 20th, and that is 7C, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council receives the minutes of Port Management Committee meeting dated December 20th, 2017.
And the motion's on the table, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And so then 7E is the minutes of the Benson School Ad Hoc Committee, Councilor Smale.
Excuse me, no.
Oh, I
This,
missed one.
Port,
Sorry,
Management.
Port Management Committee of January the 24th. Councilor Morel.
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor that municipal council receives the minutes of the Port Management Committee meeting dated January 24th, 2018.
Motion's on the table, discussion. Hearing none, those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councilor.
Yes, I just wanted to point out, it's a common error, we all do it when we change years. I think at the top there, we've got Wednesday, January 24th of 2017, I think it should be 18. And, well, I think there's another, no, I thought I had another one, but I do not, so.
Typographical error to be
Okay,
correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Those in favor of the motion? It's carried. So now I'm at Benson School, Councilor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, the municipal council receives and approves the minutes of Benson School Ad Hoc Committee meeting dated January 29th, 2018.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the floor. Those in favor? Motion is carried, and I think the next meeting of the Benson School Ad Hoc Committee is Wednesday the 28th, 6:30 at the Ingredient Center. And then 7F is the Community Development Committee meeting of February 5th, Councilor Smale.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Barrett, the municipal council receives and approves the minutes of Community Development Committee meeting dated February 5th, 2018.
Motion's on the table, discussion, hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 7G, the Recreation Advisory Committee of February the 6th, Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of the Recreation Advisory Committee meeting dated February 6th, 2018.
Motion's on the table, discussion. Councilor Morel.
Just for inquisitiveness, how did that February 9th skate and craft item go with the kids and the public skating? I think it was, anybody know?
I haven't talked to, I'll be talking to Annie tomorrow, but
Okay,
Councilor Smale has
It
something?
was well attended and very well received by the community.
okay, good, thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion on the table? Motion is carried. And so 7H is the Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance meeting of February the 12th. Councilor Morel.
Yes, it's moved by myself, second by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance Budget meeting dated February 12th, 2018.
Thank you very much. Discussion, if any? Business arising, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 7I is the Committee of the Whole Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities. Councilor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of Committee of the Whole Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities meeting dated February 20th, 2018.
Okay, had some discussion with the clerk about this one today because I couldn't get my head around it, but I got it. She straightened me out. So is there any discussion here? Hearing none, those in favor? That motion is carried. And 8A, now moving on to the action and information items coming forward from committees. First of all, 8A, the Natural Gas Grant Program. Councillor Barrett.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morale, whereas the province of Ontario established and funded the Natural Gas Grant Program as a means of stimulating the extension expansion of natural gas service in Ontario. And whereas the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal worked diligently with our natural gas franchise partner, Union Gas, to identify our joint project, County Road 2 infill and Spencerville extension, and file our application for funding under the Natural Gas Grant Program. And whereas our joint application has not been successful under the program, which was heavily oversubscribed to $500 million with only $100 million available, therefore be it resolved that the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal urges the Minister of Infrastructure, Honourable Bob Chiarelli, to continue the Ontario Natural Gas Grant Program with additional funding under the next provincial budget. Further, that this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Bob Chiarelli, MPP Steve Clark, and Union Gas.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the table. So just adding a little bit to the motion, I just want to report that part of the turn down letter was that they would do a debriefing with us if by means of a joint telephone call with Union Gas. So I've written to Union Gas and asked them to arrange the date and time for the joint telephone meeting with the funding, the people who made the funding decisions, and I'm expecting to hear from Union Gas sometime this week. So, any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, vote to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8B, the investment of industrial park land sales. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morale, that municipal council direct staff to transfer the net proceeds from the sale of land in the industrial park, allocating $59,282.37 to the industrial park land reserve fund and $19,760.79 to the industrial park wastewater reserve fund, as recommended by committee of the whole and in finance.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the table. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8C is the transfer to and from reserves and reserve funds. Councillor Smail.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett. The municipal council approves transfers to reserves and transfers from reserves funds as described below. Transfer in amount, police and service $10,000, recreation reserve $15,000, and industrial park land reserve fund transfer out of $6,087,878.43.
Thank you very much.
As recommended by the committee. You
Yes.
missed that line, sorry.
Okay, discussion, if any, here? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8D, the 2018 cost of living increases. Councillor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morale, that municipal council approves a cost of living increase for all full-time, non-union staff of 1.49% retroactive to January 1st, 2018, as per the personnel policy bylaw, as recommended by Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance.
Motion is on the table. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion is carried. Thank you. And 8E, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario Fire Medic Protection. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morale. I'm not sure how much of this I should read. I suppose
This is
it's,
just an operative clause.
Well, I think some of the whereases.
Okay.
It's with respect to Bill 160, whereas the Government of Ontario is committed to proceeding with the pilots and enabling the fire medic model despite the absence of objective evidence to show that it would improve patient outcomes or response times. And whereas in the absence of legislative protection, unwilling municipalities may be forced to enter into a pilot or adopt a fire medic model as a result of interest arbitration. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of Edwardsburg, the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal calls on the Government of Ontario to act immediately so that legislative amendments that will protect unwilling municipalities from being forced by arbitrators to have a fire medic pilot or program are placed within the upcoming budget bill before the Ontario Legislature rises for the provincial election. And that copies be distributed as set out.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the floor. Discussion, if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion, Councilor Morel, opposed, if any? Okay. Motion is carried, thank you. And 8F, the Fort Town Night Run event. Councilor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Barrett. The municipal council supports and approves the request for partial road closure on Windmill Road for the Fort Town Night Run event on May 5th, 2018, and that notification be provided to affected residents as recommended by the Committee of the Whole Public Works and Environmental Services and Facilities.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the table. Discussion, hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8G, mandatory certification and training for fire department. Councilor Smale. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's me.
Councilor Morel.
It's a long one.
I looked right at your name and said the wrong word.
I've been called worse.
Jeez, thanks, Jerry.
That's a compliment. Anyway, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor. This is a long one too. Whereas the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, MCSCS, established an advisory fire safety technical table as part of a mandate and commitment to provide recommendations to modernize fire service delivery, and whereas MCSCS has proposed new requirements under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act set out by the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, to include mandatory certification for firefighters employed or appointed to a fire department after December 31st, 2018. And whereas current firefighters that currently do not have all the required certification will find it difficult to advance their skills as they may not possess the required prerequisites set out by the NFPA, and whereas new firefighters must achieve the NFPA certification requirements within 24 months, which involves 244 hours of training in order for municipalities to maintain their current level of service. And whereas the mandatory NFPA certification requirements may significantly increase training requirements and operational expenses in the 2018 and future budgets, and whereas the standards and requirements under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act will require compliance between January the 1st, 2019 to January 1st, 2020, which will pose a time commitment challenge to new recruits and volunteer firefighters. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal calls on the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services to increase the 24-month transition regulation requirements and mandatory certifications to 36 months in order for volunteer firefighters to have the necessary time to achieve their certifications while serving and protecting their municipality. And further that, a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Premier Kathleen Wynne, Office of the Premier, Honorable Marie-France Lalonde, Minister of Community and Safety and Correctional Services, MPP Steve Clark, AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario Fire Marshals, and the Ontario Fire Chiefs Association.
Thank you very much. Motion is on the table. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. And I just want to speak briefly, the motion is passed, but just want to speak briefly to this issue of our volunteer firefighters requiring 244 hours of training now. So when Fire Chief Brian Moore reported to us about this issue at the meeting, there were actually 3 issues that were identified. One issue was the 24 months required to come to compliance. And that issue, we've asked and supported the chiefs in their recommendation that the 24 months be lengthened to 36. One of the other issues was the 244 hours of training required, which basically amounts to about 6 weeks of training for volunteers who have to maintain their jobs while they try to seek this training. So we had asked the chief and his officers if they would review that with a view to bringing forward a motion to reduce that requirement. And then the third issue that the chief talked about was the fact that the local Leeds and Grenville chiefs were attempting to enter into a memorandum of understanding, or a memorandum of understanding between the Leeds Grenville chiefs and the Ontario Fire Marshal's office, which would enable them to bring the training required into the local area so that we didn't have to send all these volunteer firefighters to the college at Gravenhurst or someplace outside the area. So I just indicate, Chief, that council, you've got the ear of council, and if your group is of the opinion that you want support on either of those 2 issues that were not dealt with by this resolution, we'd ask you to bring it forward so that we can help support you. Okay, so I'm moving on then to item 8H, which is the 2017 annual water reports. Councillor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett, that municipal council receives the 2017 annual water reports for CWS and EWEDS, and direct staff to post the annual water reports on the township's website, and direct staff to notify users via social media and local newspapers of report availability, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Environmental Services. And you got thunder all over it.
Sorry.
And, yeah, got it. I think I got it all.
Most.
Close enough.
Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. I just, speaking a little bit further, since Walkerton now, all municipal councils are obligated to receive these reports for their Environmental Services Department, review them to ensure that our Environmental Services Department are maintaining our water systems to the highest degree, and then release these annual reports to the public via the website and local newspapers. So happy to say that over the past number of years since Walkerton, all of our reports from our Environmental Services Department have come in showing that our water services are handled to the greatest and highest degree of accuracy and safety. So we're very pleased to be able to release these reports. And so now I'm at 8I, which is the case loader replacement. Councillor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Barrett, that municipal council include loader trade-in as part of a lease agreement to over monthly payments, and proceed with a 48-month leasing option for the replacement loader through Equipment Sales and Services Limited at $3,118.95 per month, and reallocate $30,000 taxed for truck 1 replacement, with $15,951.60 to Public Works vehicle expense and $14,048.40 to Public Works reserves, and to execute the required contract documents as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities Committee.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, with the permission of the mover and the seconder, and apologies to the clerk that we didn't catch this ahead of time, I think number 1 says include the loader trade-in as part of the lease agreement to lower the monthly payments. I think it should read.
I think it is correct.
And so, motion is on the table. Discussion, if any, those in favor? Motion is carried. one of those situations where the loader went bad at us after our budget was approved. And so now I'm at item 8J, which is appoint the Robinson Consultants. And Deputy Mayor Taylor, you have that motion.
I do, we'll note Councilor Barrett is leaving here.
Councilor Barrett has left the table.
Their conflict. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council appoint Andrew Robinson, PM of Robinson's Consultants, Inc., to complete an amendment to the existing engineer's report for the James Riley DeWitt Reichter Municipal Drain under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, to incorporate the changes to the culvert and crossing on the Bruce property and the relocation of the drain and culvert on the Carmichael property. The amendment report is to include an assessment schedule for the costs of the amendment report and any additional modifications required at the two properties. The amendment report is not to deal with the assessment and distribution of costs to date for modifications and related costs incurred since issuance of the certificate of completion dated November 28th, 2012 for the initial construction. This is as directed by the Court of the Ontario Drainage Referee.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the table. Discussion, if any. Hearing none, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. And this is one of those issues that council had not much decision with. We were directed by the process. And so now I'm at item K, which is an information item actually, e-notice for tax billing. Councilor Morel.
Yes. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that municipal council receives the e-notice for tax billing information item.
Motion's on the table. Discussion, if any. Those in favor? And the motion is carried. Basically, the intent of this is that the treasurer will canvass folks through the mailing of the tax notices to see if there's a strong will in the township for people to receive their tax notices by email rather than by paper. Okay, so now I'm on to item 8L on the agenda, which is port operating and capital budgets. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Councilor Morel, that municipal council approves the 2018 port operating review and expenses and capital budget as recommended by the Port Management Committee.
Motion is on the table. Discussion, if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is passed. Thank you. And so now I'm at item 8M, which is the Lofter Pit repairs. Councilor Smale.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Barrett, the municipal council awards the transfer chute replacement project to Eastern Ontario Mill Writing in the amount of $57,400, excluding HST plus 10% contingency. Authorize staff to execute the contract as recommended by the Port Management.
Motion is on the table. Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, so now I'm on what is the new item 8N, which is the release of the summary report from the in-camera meeting. I've asked Councilor or Deputy Mayor Taylor to bring that motion forward. Deputy Mayor?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that municipal council authorize public release of the summary report of the legal advice received at the February 20th, 2018 Committee of the Whole in-camera session.
Okay, discussion of any? This summary report was not available until late today. It went through several reiterations. And until this motion is passed, council will say nothing about what occurred at the in-camera session. So, calling for a motion to approve release of that summary report. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yes, I will indicate that that was unanimous. Okay, now I'm going to go to item 8O, which is the Environmental Review Tribunal Councillor Barrett.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Smale. Whereas the township has received notice of an environmental review tribunal that will consider an appeal to a decision by the Ministry of Environment that suspended certain conditions with respect to the environmental compliance approval for the use and operation of a waste disposal site at ED 19. And whereas the township has received legal advice on potential involvement in the proceedings for an environmental review tribunal hearing and pre-hearing. And whereas the Council of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal is not a willing host to the development of ED 19 as a waste disposal site, as approved in resolution number 2017-39. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal instructs its solicitor to seek presenter status on behalf of the Township at the Environmental Review Tribunal hearing and pre-hearing, and that a submission is made that supports the resolution number 2017-39.
Okay, so now the resolution, the motion is on the table, calling for discussion if any. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Barrett, and,
Mr. Hoover, do I get first crack at it there, Mr. Mayor?
okay, go ahead.
So, with the newly released summary from our in-camera session, which I just received at 6:30, this motion supports the advice, the specific advice that we received, and legal counsel advised that the township has no direct interest in this matter. For that reason, the cost of seeking party or participant status is likely not a reasonable use of taxpayer funds. So this motion doesn't call for either of those things, and is consistent with the advice that we received from our solicitor, and is consistent with the resolution 2017-39, and that's why it should be passed this evening.
Did you want to speak?
I'm not in support of the motion. I believe that as members of the United Counties, our tax dollars are going to work there, and they're party to the action. The MOE is also a party to the action, and our tax dollars support them through the province. And I don't see why we should be having our ratepayers pay further to have the township be deemed at any level in this matter. So I would not support this motion.
I'm, just for the benefit of the public that are here tonight, the summary report of the in-camera advice, council has just authorized that summary report be released, and I'm going to read it. The township received advice from its solicitor regarding the pre-hearing conference for an appeal before the Environmental Review Tribunal at a closed session meeting on February the 20th, 2018. Legal counsel advised that the township has no direct interest in this matter. For that reason, the cost of seeking party or participant status is likely not a reasonable use of ratepayer funds. The questions arising in the aforementioned appeal will be determined by the expert evidence produced by the parties, not by the number of parties. In this case, the MOECC will have party status. This means that the quality of the expert evidence to be produced at the hearing will likely be of a high quality. For these reasons, the township was advised not to seek party or participant in the hearing. Council was advised that the township concerns regarding the ED 19 landfill will be represented by the MOECC. So it depends on how you read or interpret the legal advice that we received, but you've heard the report, the summary report from the lawyer, and I'm heavily influenced by that advice that we have from the lawyer, which indicates basically that our interests are well represented by MOECC. And you have to remember that the issue that the Environmental Review Tribunal will be dealing with is the issue is as follows. The director of the branch has suspended 2 clauses from the certificate of approval. The county council has appealed that decision. Now that issue of whether or not the director had the authority to suspend those two conditions is the issue before the tribunal. The two parties to the issue are county council on the one hand, questioning the director's decision, and MOEC on the other hand, saying, that's the decision of our director, and we're standing behind it. To my way of thinking, the motion which council passed, declaring ourselves to be not a willing host, is not germane to the issue, which is the narrow question of the powers of the director. And I'm heavily influenced by the advice that I received in the in-camera session, so I'll be voting against the motion on the table. So that's the issue, and further discussion if any. Councillor Barrett, you've already spoken once, so I'm going to give Councillor Morell and Councillor Smale a chance to speak. Councillor Morell first.
That's okay. I'm going to support the motion because I seem to recall that night that this is a little bit different than what he pointed out, the very last thing he said. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but he said that we should be seeking not party, but participant. No, the first one, sorry.
Presenter.
Presenter, yes, and I believe that's where he directed his, which would be what this motion represents.
I think in response to that, and I don't want to get into debate until Councillor Morell has spoken, but just to pick up on that point, I think what he indicated is that they would be happy to represent us at the pre-hearing conference if we decided that we would accept or if we decided that we wanted to obtain presenter status. Councillor Morell.
This is a heavily weighted item. I go back and forth on it. I see both sides. I don't like spending taxpayers' money, Mr. Mayor. I know the difficult situation you're in as a representative of the township and council there, the counties, and trying to juggle both hats. And the terms that we're familiar with in the original concept, you know, the four items, you know, the tipping, the royalties and things like that are always, and always have been the forefront in my mind, regardless of whether the counties took it over and became to keep those four issues regarding benefits to the township, and even more so going with the private individual. There's been a lot of emotion and on all sides of this issue, and we did pass that. I know we passed it a year ago when it was we were under a lot of emotion and duress, and feelings were at the highest point. And yes, there was some emotional irrationality, and a lot of things have been said in the meantime. Some things that were misinformation, and some things that were falsehoods and whatnot, but nevertheless, we did put our names behind that at the time. And I know that the other two areas, the party and the participant, are quite costly. And we put our names to this willing host, and I agree that we were given advice that our status is not going to be that impactful, I guess that's the word. But I'm looking at it as kind of the happy medium, between the two, and the fact that I'm assuming it's just a one-day, and it could be just a one-day event, and cost would be light to the township. And I'm looking back at I'm seeing both sides of the issue. I can recall, you know, I do read our local paper and the column by our gentleman in the audience, Mr. Martell, where he said it seems strange to have, you know, the county taxpayers going against the provincial taxpayer is the Ministry of Environment. And then I see where Deputy Mayor's coming from about taxpayers' dollars from our township going towards this as well. So there's one more level, immediate taxpayers' money going towards it. But I think it kind of comes to middle ground, I think, in this issue. And we're showing we're still not a willing host. We're not, what's the word I'm looking for? We have no guarantees of how negotiations ever went, or know how they've gone. If things were handed out and benefits weren't coming to the township, I certainly wouldn't be a willing host of those parameters that we've always said, you know, the free tipping fees, the royalties, the road takeover, and tax grants in lieu of taxes. Those things, when they were always issues in my mind. And my big fear is I don't want to lose those positive things to the township, regardless of how emotional some people feel. And if this thing ever did transpire, so it's been a, you know, it's been a real tug of war, and I see this perhaps as perhaps one day of cost going, and we represent, you know, it might mean the mayor representing or whomever decides or whatnot, but.
Okay, but can I just jump in there?
Yes.
I want to make it very clear that the elected officials are not involved in this process. This is a legal process. Parties are represented by legal counsel.
Okay.
And the other thing I think should make clear is that there are 4 levels of participation for those in the audience that may not be familiar. The lightest level is to attend as an observer. Anybody can sit in the courtroom as an observer. The second level is presenter, where you file a brief, that's it, you go away. But that brief is filed by the lawyer representing our corporation, and that's what the motion basically speaks to, that we would seek presenter status. You have to go and ask for that status. So the lawyer would have to go to the pre-hearing, wait until he gets an opportunity to speak to the tribunal, and then seek the presenter status. And if he got that status, then he could file that motion that indicates we're not a willing host. The other 2 levels, which is, what's the next level?
Party participant.
Party status and participant status. So I'll deal with participant first. If you seek participant status, you're obligated, first of all, you can call witnesses and you can cross-examine witnesses, but you're obligated to be in attendance at the hearing, when the hearing takes place, every day, every hour. And again, parties are not represented by elected officials. That means the lawyer has to be there. That's participant status. If you're party status, then the same rules apply. You're obligated to be there. Your lawyer is obligated to be there every hour of every day of the hearing, and must be subject to, and is able to call witnesses, conduct cross-examinations of the other parties' witnesses, etc., etc. So I think the advice that we got from our lawyer is that those two upper levels are just not worthy of taxpayers' money, but that is not what this motion addresses. This motion is to seek presenter status, which means maybe 1 or 2 days of the legal fees, going and filing a brief that says we're not a willing host, which, as I said, is not germane to the issue, so I don't really want to spend taxpayers' money for that purpose. So that's me speaking, and we'll go one more round if everybody wants to speak one more time. And Councillor Barrett, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would say that I certainly didn't act under duress when I put the motion forward, 2017-39, declaring us an unwilling host. I didn't perceive us to be under any threat of violence or any illegal action or anything like that. So I passed that of sound mind and good judgment with the well-being of the community and my constituents in mind. But I think it's a red herring to say that we're not going to make a submission because someone else has the same interest as us who is presenting or who is a party to the action, so the MOECC, because we make submissions that support the work of other parties on a regular basis. We did it in this meeting already tonight by supporting initiatives by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So we do that regularly, and I think that this is consistent with that practice. And I think that, you know, for the amount of money that it would cost us to have our council present for a day and to prepare a submission to the tribunal, I think is reasonable, and it's certainly not precluded or recommended against by our legal counsel. And I'm sure that Alt and Alt would be pleased to accept our money if we asked them to seek party or participant status, but they provided us with good advice here, and that's what this motion supports. So when the gravity of the issue is considered, and there are, you know, there's a lot of money that's going to be spent by different groups to represent their interests at this. I'm sure the government is going to expend, the government of Ontario is going to expend a great sum of money on this. I'm sure that the county will do the same. I think that us asking our lawyer to attend for a day is quite reasonable for what's at stake in support of our position on the issue.
Anybody else want to speak a second time? Okay, Councillor Smale.
I believe that this motion is our foundation to representing what our constituents want, and that's why I'm going to support it.
Anybody else speaking second time?
I'm not convinced that the majority of our constituents are behind that. So I still am opposed, and I've asked for a recorded vote.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Taylor asked for a recorded vote, and I've already spoken a couple of times. I feel that while we do support AMO and a number of other bodies from time to time, it doesn't cost us money to do that. Legal bill here is going to be, I don't know what it is, I'm not even going to take a guess, because it's going to depend on how long it takes our lawyer to speak to the tribunal, and then what he charges us to file a brief. And besides the fact, it's beside the point, and will have in my opinion, will have very little impact. It's not the issue. So I'm going to call the question on this, and we'll see how it goes. So Councillor Barrett.
Yay.
Councillor Morrell.
Yay.
Councillor Smale.
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Nay.
And I'll vote against it myself. So the motion is carried, and staff will have Mr. Alt attend at the necessary time and place on our behalf. Okay, so now I'm on to item 9 on the agenda. Item 9 on the agenda is the correspondence. Councillor Morrell.
It's moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor that Mr. Council receive the correspondence listings for the following dates as previously circulated: January 19th, 2018, January 29th, 2018, February 12th, 2018, and February 21st, 2018.
Motion is on the floor. Discussion if any. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And the next is the approval of the disbursement sheets. Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Excuse me. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Morrell, that municipal council approves payment of municipal invoices circulated and dated as follows. Report dated February 2nd, 2018, $371,425.48. Report dated February 13th, 2018, $146,369.82. Report dated February 21st, 2018, $352,002.84, for a total of $869,798.14.
Thank you very much. The motion is on the table. Questions? Hearing none. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And moving then to various bylaws that we have before us tonight. So the first bylaw is 11A, which is the bylaw to adopt the general government estimates for sums required. That's called basically approving the budget estimates, not setting the tax rate at this point, just adopting the budget estimates. So Councillor Smale, I believe you have that motion for the first and second reading.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Barrett, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt the general government estimates for sums required during the year, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
And that's first and second reading. Those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried, and it's carried unanimously. It can proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Barrett, that a bylaw to adopt the general government estimates for sums required during the year be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, and sealed, and number 2018-06.
And so third reading, those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried, and again, it's unanimous. So for those in attendance, it looks like at this point, 1.46% increase in the tax rate. Some of you will have had increases in your assessment, and you'll feel a little bit heavier. Others will have had no increase in your assessment, and it'll be 1.46%. We will, we have to give 1.43. We have to give, how much notice is it before we adopt the tax rates? Through the treasurer?
Yeah, through the chair. We have to wait for the county to pass their rate.
Right.
And the school board to finalize the rates. They've published their rates, but they've not actually been regulated. So
Okay.
until those two authorities actually pass, we have a combined rate that we pass.
Yeah,
So the final.
and just so folks in attendance know, the province has signaled that they're reducing the education tax rate by 5%.
Correct.
And discussions are ongoing at county council, and if they follow through the way they were the last meeting, it looks like county council will not incur a tax rate increase this year. So in effect, what that will mean for some of our taxpayers is an actual reduction in the amount of the check that you write. That doesn't happen very often. So that's where we stand with that, and as the treasurer has indicated, we can't actually pass those rates until we hear from county, and then the provincial is authorized by regulation. So I'm moving on to 11B, which is amend bylaw 2013-62, our credit card policy. Councillor Brown.
Yes, moved by myself, second by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to bylaw 2013-62, being a bylaw to adopt a credit card policy, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Carries unanimously. Proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that bylaw to amend bylaw 2013-62, being a bylaw to adopt a credit card policy, be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and number 2018-07.
So, discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. So that will amend the credit card policy, and so then item number 11C is our commercial banking agreement. Councillor Smale.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Barrett, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the treasurer to execute commercial banking agreement with the Royal Bank of Canada, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. You can proceed to third reading.
Thank you. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Barrett, the bylaw to authorize the mayor and treasurer to execute the commercial banking agreement with the Royal Bank of Canada be now read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and number 2018-08.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. So just a quick comment from me, because it's going to be a difficult document for me to sign, the banking agreement with the Royal Bank after they've announced that they're leaving Spencerville. So just by way of explanation, let's put it this way. They made us a deal that was hard to refuse. And they were actually quite they were hard to get a hold of, but once we got a hold of them, they loosened up the purse strings considerably. So, council has decided that we'll maintain our banking relationship with them. And they do pay us a very good rate of interest on our monthly account balances, and we have our investments with another firm entirely. So we make fairly good interest on our account balances. So now I'm proceeding to item number 11D, which is the CWWF. Please help me.
Clean Water and Wastewater Fund.
Transfer Payment Agreement Amendment.
Correct.
And Councillor Barrett, you have that motion.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morale, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to amend bylaw 2017-31 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, MOI, Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussion of any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And third reading, it carried unanimously, so we'll go to third reading.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Morale that a bylaw to amend bylaw 2017-31 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario, MOI, Clean Water and Wastewater Fund be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-09.
And those in favor of this one? And that's carried. So just by way of explanation, we have an agreement with the province to give us the funding. That funding, the time to spend that funding was running out. They're amending these agreements all across the province. It looks like we would have met the original deadline anyway, but we're going to execute an amendment, give ourselves a little bit more time. And 11E is the interim tax levy, and Deputy Mayor Taylor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morale, that the move be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize an interim tax levy in advance of the adoption of the tax rates for 2018, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Discussion of any? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify. It's unanimous. Proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morale, that a bylaw to authorize an interim tax levy in advance of the adoption of the tax rates for 2018 be now read a third time, and finally passed, signed, and sealed, and numbered 2018-10.
Discussion of any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. So if I believe this authorizes the treasurer to send out an interim tax levy in the amount of 50% of last year's tax bills.
Correct.
So now, and those, by the way, will go out and be due by March the 31st, if I'm correct?
March 29th.
March 29th?
March 29th.
Okay, thank you. The next is item number 12 on the agenda, which is the CAO's administrative update, but you'll notice we have a different person sitting in that chair tonight, and so we have the acting CAO's administrative update. So, Mr. Grant, would you like to highlight your report?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple points. Just a reminder of the special meeting on March 5th, the hobby farm and domestic fowl rezoning public meeting at 6 p.m. prior to CDC. And you'll note that in April, we've moved the CDC meeting from the Monday, April 2nd to Wednesday, April 4th. And in April as well, the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities is moved to Tuesday, April 17th. Under Treasury, we have an on-site meeting with the Public Sector Digest with their senior management team to kick off our asset management project. Also of note, under Public Works, staff will be meeting with OPP to improve communication around road closures, especially along the 400 series highways. And I guess finally of note, under emergency management, we'll have a new field officer from the OFM-EM for 2018, as Lisa Harvey is on a one-year secondment with Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Now, the council does any member of council have questions for Mr. Grant? Councilor Rao.
Just, I was inquisitive as to the low-lift pump station. The woodpecker issue. You said there was two poles or something that had to be replaced? Repair of 2 hydro poles required due to damage sustained from woodpeckers.
Through the mayor, yes, we've had some activity, so the repair's been made and hopefully measures put in place that we won't have that reoccurrence.
And one thing I'm just gonna add to your report, under Treasury, we did receive a grant. We were successful in our application. I think it's 50,000 from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to
That's
help
still,
us.
That's still finalized.
Still to be
finalizing?
finalized.
That's correct.
We've got reason to be optimistic.
We have reason to be optimistic, yes we do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to explain there that the township already has an asset management in place. We've had an asset management plan in place for the better part of 3 to 5 years. The basis of our asset management plan was the age of our assets. The province now is imposing new standards on these asset management plans, and they're requiring us to develop asset management plans which not only take into account the age of the asset, but the condition of the asset, and also the service level that we use to deliver, that asset is used to deliver. And it's becoming a very intricate process, and so that's why Mr. Grant has referred to the meeting with PSD. They will be guiding us through that process. Any other, Deputy Mayor?
On the St. Lawrence and the water level for 2018, are we having any headway with respect to contacting residents or
Getting
for flood advisory?
Yeah, through the mayor, we have that list, and we expect that notice will go to those properties that were affected within the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Hearing none, then I believe that there is a motion to approve the CAO's administrative update. And Councilor Morel, I think you have that motion.
Yes.
Did I read it already? No.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Taylor, that the municipal council receives the CAO's administrative report as presented.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. So now I'm at item 14 on the agenda, which is the mayor's report. There are a number of things to report on here this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're on item 13, council inquiries, you've noticed the motion, sorry.
Oh, sorry, you're right, I skipped one. Item 13, council inquiries. Anyone have anything to bring forward or any notices of motion to bring forward? Went backwards and tell us one step backwards, one step forward.
Do you want me to read the motion before you give your report?
No, because it's gonna be verbal. So a few things to bring to the attention of council. First of all, I did attend at Jones Rail Cruise official opening of their rail yard with the MP and the MPP on February the 2nd and presented a commemorative scroll. I did attend at the Air Liquide official grand opening at the Greenfield Global Plant Site on February the 9th, again with the MP and the MPP, and presented a commemorative scroll. I wanted to just talk for a minute, a reminder to council of the Augusta Mayor's Breakfast this Friday, 7:30 at Thousand Islands Village on County Road 2. I want to bring to council's attention, next item, I want to bring to council's attention that we can expect kind of an official opening for the Giant Tiger Distribution Center sometime in the March, April, May timeframe. They're being very vague about when it might occur, but it's important, I think, that we make some sort of a presentation at that occasion, which is bigger and beyond the ordinary scrolls that we present. So be looking for input from council over the next little while, say within the next 10 days or so, and see if we can come up with a concept and a budget. I want to talk just a little bit about the 730 truck stop bankruptcy to indicate that bankruptcy occurred sometime in December, was formally declared in December. It's a numbered company that held the 730 truck stop assets. I want to talk about it because the township is a secured creditor on that bankruptcy to the extent of some $333,000. And we've secured our interest by means of a lien against the property. The trustee in bankruptcy is Ray Chabot Inc. And this is a large accounting firm. They've been in the insolvency business for quite a long time, and they're quite well connected with, I'm going to call it, big money enterprises. The process doesn't require that the property be offered for sale on a public offering. What generally happens in these kinds of bankruptcy is that the trustee will attempt to find a buyer, and then the trustee will bring that offer forward to a creditors meeting. And at the creditors meeting, the creditors are informed, this is the deal that I've got on the table, you can accept it or reject it. So the secured creditors are one of the banks, I'm not going to name the bank, which is, as we say, in for over $1 million. We're the next secured creditor at $333,000, and then that ends the list of secured creditors. All the other creditors below that are unsecured. There's a couple of them that are well in. It's all public information. You can find it out for yourselves, but I'll just indicate that there's a couple of parties in there that are in for over $1 million, around about $1 million each. And then the list goes on from there. Now, I've asked staff to keep me informed of the date of the creditors meeting because I intend to attend that creditors meeting as an observer. I'm not a participant. I'm assuming that the treasurer and or the CAO will attend that creditors meeting, and I'm asking that that issue be brought forward because it's important that when the treasurer and or the CAO attend the creditors meeting that they have power to bind at that meeting. So I'll just bring that up. I just wanted to, yes?
Sorry, if you could just clarify why we're a creditor?
Well, it appears that we're a creditor because of our firefighting costs and the associated cleanups.
I just wanted.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you very much. And by the way, our ordinarily, as you know, Councillor Smale, ordinarily our first claim on the firefighting costs would be against the insureds, or against the owner's insurance policy. In this case, the insurance is refusing to pay out any money to any party. And so that's why the bankruptcy has occurred and a number of other factors. I just noticed for council and others here tonight that Angelo's Truck Stop, located at the downward end of County Road 44, is under new owner-operators. I've met both Sam and Sony Mehta. They've been in business for the last 26 years. When their background is something like this, when Husky first moved into Ontario from Western Canada, they were big all across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and into BC. When they first moved into Ontario, they purchased 100 retail stations in the Toronto area. At that time, there were 100 independent franchisors operating those 100 locations. Over that period of time, they consolidated the locations under what they called managers. And Sam and Suni operated 9 of those locations for pretty close to 6 years. And they were operating them as operators. So they have come to our township with the hope of owning the 730, or Angelo's Truck Stop. And very nice people, and they've got big plans for Angelo's. Now the last thing here, and I'm making this request to the treasurer sort of from the mayor's chair, because I'd like to have council endorsement of the request, because it may involve a bit of work for the treasurer. But at the recent county council meeting, I was brought aware of an opportunity to drastically lower, I think lower, our internet costs while at the same time improving the service. It's a special program that Bell Canada operates, but in order to make the comparables, I'd like the treasurer, if we could arrange it, to prepare a report for our monthly internet costs, first of all at Cardinal, as it pertains to the ingredient center and the library. Now, both of those locations will qualify for this program that Bell Canada has, because they're both located within what I call fiber optic distance of the Cardinal switch. And also, if we could get a report on the Spencerville internet cost, because we have 4 locations here, the municipal office, the arena, the library, and I think the fire hall, which are all within fiber optic distance of the switch here on the main street. So if we could get an idea of those reports, as soon as this, I'd like to have them ready so that when the CAO comes back, I can arrange the meeting with Bell Canada to get that process started. I think if what I heard at County Council is correct, the internet costs will go way down, and the speeds and broadband width will go way up. So just put that out. So now I will call on the motion to receive the mayor's report.
Ask a question?
Go ahead.
The other buildings in Cardinal include the fire department, the water, and wastewater treatment plants. Would they not be included in that?
We'll ask when we get there, but they have to be within a certain distance of the switch, and those got the environmental service and the water are on the other side of the canal, so to
Fire
speak.
department?
Yeah.
And the
The
pool?
fire department,
And the
oh
pool?
yeah, the fire department would qualify, yeah.
And the pool?
The pool would qualify, yeah. I don't know whether we have internet at the pool or not, do we? I don't think so.
Moved by myself,
Go ahead.
seconded by Councillor Morale, that the municipal council receives the mayor's report as presented.
Any other questions? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. So just around the table quickly, can I get concurrence from the council to have the treasurer repair that internet report? Everybody, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now I'm under item 15 on the agenda, which is question period. Up to you folks. No? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor Seo, as the representative on County's Council, I wonder if you can speak to the level of funding for counties, for the legal counsel, at the upcoming ERT hearing.
Now run a question by me again, just the total level of funding?
Sure.
Okay, well, when the final budget is passed at county council this year, it will exceed $100 million. One of the numbers that I recall, and I don't know how accurate I am here, but I think a 0% increase in the tax rate, I wish I had my numbers in front of me, a 0% increase in the tax rate will still produce an additional $3 million to county council coffers because of the phase-in assessment across the entire region. So that's about the best I can give you off the top of my head.
Sorry, just to clarify, my question was with respect to legal financing for legal counsel, with respect to the ERT hearing.
Okay, no, I can't answer that. I had that question from one of you folks that's here already. I think, was it Mr. Piper? Yes, it was. And I went through my budget documents as best I could to the area of the budget where I thought I would find it. And I did respond to Mr. Piper. I haven't got my notes in front of me to know what I said. The cost to me in the area of the budget where I looked was relatively innocuous. So I don't really know what area of the budget that particular project will be financed under. I just plain can't answer that question because the county budget binder is that thick. And I have been through it all from one end to the other, but each department has a line for what is called outside services. And you can't always determine from the heading outside services what is being purchased on that line item. So I'm not saying that it's hidden, but it's embedded to the extent that I can't draw it out. Go ahead, second question. Last question, by the way.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Can you endeavor to seek further clarification on that line item and report back to your council?
Okay, but I don't think that there's a single line item. That's what I'm saying. There is no single line item in the budget for that project, if I can put it that way. And by the way, just so you know, after I had the request from Mr. Piper, I did ask the CAO directly in a side conversation if he had some sort of an estimate as to what the county council costs would be for this project. He indicated to me that, and of course you have to understand that county receives invoices from 2 or 3 different legal firms each month. And when those bills come in from the legal firms, they deal with several issues. So you have to take the invoice and split the invoice from the firm that's dealing with this. You have to take that invoice and split it out because they're doing several things for us. So, and I don't see invoices at the county council level. I can ask for them, but I don't see them. They're not presented as normal course business the way our disbursement sheets are approved. I don't know whether that helps you, but I did try to get to the bottom of it, but I have not been successful. To be honest with you, I don't think they have any kind of an estimate, because I don't think they know, they don't have any idea of how long the hearings will take. All they know is the rate that is charged by that legal firm for the various people in the firm, and it's their hourly rates for each one of the people in the firm. That's the way we're billed. By the way, that's the way our invoices come from our legal firm as well. We're just billed so much for the partner, so much for the associate partner, so much for the clerk, so much da-da-da-da-da. Other questions from the audience? Yes, sir?
Can I direct this to Councillor?
All questions come through the chair?
Okay, well, you said that the motion to be not a willing participant would have little impact. And I'm wondering what the lawyer said, if there was any precedent, like if a council had put forward a motion in a previous hearing, what kind of impact would it have? Did the lawyer agree with the mayor? That's my question.
Okay, now, I gotta get to the nub of your question, and remember that the only answer that I can give you has to come from the summary report that was read out loud.
Yeah.
And the summary report that was read out loud did not address the question of presenter status. So I think if you recall my answer was,
But didn't you say the lawyer recommended presenter status?
no, I didn't. No, the summary report did not deal with the presenter status.
He would provide a brief and then he would submit a motion, right? Of not a willing participant.
Yeah, that's the process. If it goes something like this, if we were to seek presenter status, which the council has decided to do,
Yeah.
then the lawyer attends the pre-hearing conference on our behalf, and he seeks from the tribunal
I guess what I'm
to be
asking.
recognized as a presenter.
I guess what I'm asking is, does the lawyer feel that being a presenter is, does he agree with you? That
Okay,
it won't be-
my
have little
reading,
impact?
my personal reading of the advice that I received was my personal feeling, interpreting the advice that I received, was that it would be of little or no effect. That's my personal feeling.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson?
Just a point of clarification.
No, this is last.
Yeah, I understand, just to follow up on that, Chair. As a point of clarification, and I'll turn to the question, but the ERT process is a quasi-judicial process. And so the point of the quasi-judicial process is to allow homeowners, landowners, whomever, in this case a council, to seek different levels of status. That's why there are different levels of statuses. And so all of those are weighted equally by the judges. And to your point that you would require legal counsel's presenter status, that's not true. That's actually incorrect. As a landowner, for example, anyone can show up and seek that presenter status. They don't need to do that. That's why they have that designation. So to ask a question, would you not think that given the fact that it's a quasi-judicial process and that the ERT is considering views from all different folks, they're gonna argue, certainly, county's gonna argue one view, the Crown's gonna argue different, we're gonna seek presenter status, we'll argue a different view, or that we'll support the MLACC, so certainly there'll be different views. Wouldn't you think that the view of your council as being an unwilling host would be an important part of that process?
Okay, so I'm going back to your basic premise. Your basic premise was that anybody can go, and whether or not that is not the advice that I received. The advice that I received is that it's no place for elected officials, don't go there. If you're gonna go with your legal team. Or have your legal team be there on your behalf. That's the advice I received. Now, to go back one more step, this would be the second such, what do you call it, quasi-judicial type of process that I've seen in the last 2 years. And in the former one, it was the same kind of a situation where people felt they could come and represent themselves. And I can tell you that the advice from the adjudicator in that case is you're making a mistake here, because you're sitting there, you're asking me to give you status to represent yourself, but I can tell from the situation that I'm hearing that you're in no position to represent yourself. I strongly urge you, he said to them, to get legal advice before you begin this process. Now, I can only tell you what I heard with my own ears. And by the way, that's the 2 years that the two that I'm familiar with since I've been on this council. I've been on a couple of others where the same kind of advice was presented. So I know that the danger that an elected official can get into by appearing at those kinds of situations is very difficult. You must remember one thing, and the lawyer pointed this out to me in no uncertain terms. Council acts by bylaw only, not by means of its elected officials. So you cannot be going there without a bylaw authorizing you to attend and what you're going to say when you attend. Now, could I get such a bylaw from my council? Probably, but I'm still reluctant to make that move. Very reluctant, in view of the fact that I don't think that there's anything to be gained from it, because the fact that we're not a willing host is not germane to the issue on the docket, which is, did the director have the authority to suspend those two conditions?
Which conditions did he suspend?
10 and 11, I think, or 11 and 12. I
Does
can't
that have
remember.
anything to do with the 4 points that he keeps talking about?
Sorry, sir, just for the record, I forgot to ask you your name.
Sorry, my name's Stefan.
Stefan?
Yeah.
Last name?
Kahoot.
Okay. K-A?
K-O-H-U.
K-O-H, okay. Just for the record. Sorry, so what was the question again?
No, I didn't, you got it. But I have another question just about the firefighters and the $330,000 for the truck stop. Does the township have any idea how much money they could recoup from the sale of the property? And if so, do you expect to recoup that money from such a sale?
Okay, so further to the report that I already made, the total creditors list, I told you what the secured creditors were.
Top two, right?
Yeah, and then I told you that the others were down below that.
Yeah.
And what did I say? I said the bank was 5.
You said it was 5 million?
Is that what I said?
You said 1, that's what I
I
heard.
thought I said 5. Sorry, if I said 1, I misspoke. It's 5.
Okay.
And then we're 333.
Yeah.
And I think the others total up probably another 3 million. I haven't got it right in front of me here, it's not really important. The property has been appraised. I have not seen the appraisal, but I don't think that the appraisal will come anywhere near to meeting even the secured creditors' requirements. Now, the question is, will the property lien holder, which is us, will we come before or equal to the banks? That's a legal question, and I don't know the answer.
Fair enough, thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Jones Rail. I've read that they'll be storing a lot of cars in the facility that they have built and are expanding. Do you know offhand, will there be any loaded tanker cars in there with hazardous materials in them being stored?
I can't answer that question at all. I have no idea.
Is there any way of finding out? And if there is there a disaster plan in effect from Jones Rail for the fire department in case there's a spill or of that nature?
That, to be honest with you, that's gonna be their problem. They'll have to deal with it. And I'm assuming that they'll deal with it by determining who they're taking on as customers. I mean, there's gonna be lots of loaded tank cars in there. I mean, there's gonna be tank cars loaded with glucose and other materials from Casco and ethanol from, I suspect, from Greenfield. I mean, so if you take ethanol as a hazardous product, there will probably be tank cars from there. I mean, I don't know how his business model is finally gonna come together, but it does involve storage of both full and empty cars.
Has our fire department been made aware of what requirements they might have to provide in the case of any issue?
No, I suspect that that'll all come in due time. I mean, he's just ramping up his business now. I know that Chief Moore has now been involved in several visits. I guess I would call them familiarization visits to a number of our plants, and I don't know, I'll let Chief Moore answer for himself. Have you had a contact with Jones Rail at all?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm in due course, I'm sure he will. Any other questions, folks, before I proceed? We have no closed session. I'm gonna be looking for the confirmatory bylaw and then the adjournment. Yes, sir?
Just wanted to know the name of the bank that's 5 million in.
You know what? It's on the list of creditors. I don't have the list of creditors
Okay,
with
that's
me.
fine, I'll
Just going back to Mr. Johnson.
Sir, can I get your name too for the record?
Kevin Mankamp.
Go ahead.
Just going back to Mr. Johnson's original question, maybe I misunderstood your answer, but are you telling me you get a bill from a lawyer and you don't know what it's for? It's just so much for this person, so much for that person?
No, it always indicates the matter. So the matter generally indicates the matter or the issue, and then the time docket is there with that. But I mean, lawyers' bills are generally, even in a 3-month period, our bill would probably be for the treasurer, 20 pages, 10 pages.
It really depends on the matters that are at hand, for sure.
Let me just have our treasurer answer another question for you, might help you. Do we, when we get legal bills from our legal counsel, do we segregate those bills and allocate costs back to certain departments?
Yes, depending on the invoice, for sure.
Yeah, so the treasurer pulls them apart and allocates them back to departments. And I'm sure that the same thing is done at counties, but when it's done at counties, it'll go under the heading of contracted services. So you don't really recognize it as a legal bill. In our case, I think we show it as actual legal expenses, don't we?
We do use that terminology.
Yeah,
Yes.
we use the term legal expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Lady at the back of the room?
Anymore. A further question to that. This council perhaps not, if they were entering into something such as going against MOECC, would they not get an estimate of what the legal bills would be before they entered into something like that to see whether it was effective or not? And I guess my further question is, why would that not have been a discussion before the mayors of county council?
I'll answer the question directly. In matters like this, there's no firm that will give you an estimate. They will give you their rates. And the reason they will not give you an estimate is because they have no idea of where those kind of hearings are going. They have no idea or any way of estimating the number of hours they're going to have to spend on them.
So county's council blindly goes into this appeal without having any clue how much it might cost the taxpayer, is what you're essentially saying.
And if I can just draw a parallel, it's, it's much the same in the private arena. Once you get sued by somebody, you have a choice. You can either capitulate and give in, or you can fight. Once you make the decision to fight and defend yourself, you have no idea what your costs are gonna be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, folks? Thank you very much. I appreciate your attendance here tonight. I appreciate your interest. We have no closed session. I'm looking for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Barrett.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that the move be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution that shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Thank you very much. The motion's on the table. Discussion if any. Those in favor, please signify. The motion is carried unanimously. We can proceed to third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Morel, that a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2018-11.
Thank you very much. Those in favor, please signify. Motion is carried. And could I have the motion for adjournment, please, Councillor Smale?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Barrett. That municipal council is now adjourned at 8:01 p.m.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the table. Those in favor? Motion is carried. So once again, folks, thank you very much for your attendance.
Dude, I won't sleep if I don't have